starting in just a few minutes. We're going to get going with our webinar, all on doing a live SEO audit content review with Wix and with SEJ. So we are joined by myself, my co-host extraordinaire, Mr. Morty Overstein, and also by Vahan Petrosyan from SEJ. Thank you so much for joining us today, Vahan.
Thank you, Morten Crystal. Thank you for having me at this amazing event.
Thank you. It's fantastic. And SEJ, if you're not familiar with SEJ, which I hope that you are, SEJ is a search engine journal. It is one of the premier destinations for search engine news and search engine knowledge. Vahan, do you want to tell us a little bit about what you do there quickly?
Yes, of course. Search Engine Journal is a publication which provides news about SEO, PPC, and all kind of marketing. And first source for the news and the marketing altogether. So at least for me. And who does hear about Search Engine Journal first time, make sure to check out our website at searchenginejournal.com.
Yes, absolutely. Yep. Thank you so much for that. Okay, so this webinar, just so that you know, everyone in the chat, yes, the webinar is being recorded. So if anyone else asks that later on, joins later, yes, it is being recorded. In fact, the YouTube link will be sent to you via email right after this webinar so that you have access to that. And yes, thank you, Julie. Huzzah, indeed. Yes, they'll be sent to you. It'll also be posted on the Wix SEO Learning Hub at the same URL that you registered for this session at. So you can find it on Wix SEO/learn. Also, you can ask questions in the Q&A panel. You're all very familiar with the Q&A panel because you've been telling us all where you're logging in from, so that's great. And do stay tuned for future webinars on the Wix SEO Learning Hub. We do them every month. We've got another one coming up soon with Google Search Console after this. And that's where we're going to keep doing there. So with regards to the agenda, we're going to do introductions. What?
There's the newsletter.
There's the newsletter. I forgot to say.
We have a brand new, almost brand new, the second month, a monthly SEO newsletter called Searchlight, and over at the Wix SEO Learning Hub, so wix.com/SEO/learn/newsletter, you can subscribe at SEO tips, curated articles, and all sorts of updates on what's happening in the wide world of SEO. Okay, sorry, Crystal.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so after that fantastic plug, with regards to the agenda, we're going to do introductions. I'm going to pass it over to Morty Overstein to do all of that lovely stuff. Then we're going to get into this website and the whole live site audit. So we're going to talk about a few core pages that will apply to most things. So we're going to talk about the homepage, which applies to everybody. We're going to talk about the FAQ page, which is a page that a lot of people have, but we're going to be looking at it from a perspective of an FAQ page, but also as a static page. And we're also going to have a few notes on the blog. And then we're going to go to the Q&A. So we're going to try to answer your Q&A questions in the Q&A tool at the bottom of the screen as we go along. And then if we see some trends on the questions, we'll answer those at the end. So with that, I'm going to stop my share. And I'm going to pass it over to the extraordinary, the incredible, the fantastic, the wonderful, the amazing, the incredible, the stupendous Morty Overstein.
You are returning the favor from our podcast,
But I think I repeated myself, which you never do.
No, I do. I definitely do. Here we go. Okay, so before we dive into this website, which is a fabulous website, and we're going to share some lessons around content optimization from an SEO point of view, I just want to give an enormous shout out to Dynamic Wave Consulting. They're a fantastic design firm based out of Philadelphia. They do all sorts of social media marketing, some SEO marketing, digital marketing in general, business development. They've done an amazing job with this website. They're an award-winning design agency, so definitely do check them out. They're obviously a Wix partner. I cannot thank them enough for sharing this website with us. It's a really fantastic website. They've done an amazing job on it. And now let's see what we can learn from the website. So the website we're looking at today, it's a local HVAC business based out of New York. And what we're going to do is take a look, starting off with the homepage. And I guess I'll kick it off a little bit. The homepage does really well. First off, the site's really well designed. The information is really clear. It's really logical. The information is well written. There's all sorts of social proof throughout the website. I love the fact that we integrated with the Google Map. This is really, really well done. What I would say, I think one thing that's really interesting that people don't often realize that how interesting Google can be. So we like to think that Google is super advanced, and they are super advanced, but sometimes Google has what I call like gaps, unexpected gaps that you wouldn't think should be there. And one of them, I think, might come up at this website. If you look at the websites, or the business rather, their Google business profile, it says Manhattan HVAC experts. Awesome. It has the location in there, has the name in there. They have reviews in there. It's a really well optimized panel. I love the fact that there are Google posts in there. This panel really feels alive to me. Yeah. But if you look at the page, it's like in New York City, Manhattan, New York City. I think Google gets that. But if you scroll down, and we often don't think this specific about Google. Here it talks about Brooklyn, New York. And Brooklyn, New York and New York, New York, they're not exactly the same. For example, we look at SEMrush, which is an SEO tool, which we have an integration with inside of Wix. And we look for air conditioner repair in Brooklyn. There's a monthly search volume in the US of 170 searches, meaning give or take, it's a very, very, very rough estimate. 170 people look for this term, air conditioner repair, on Google every month. Brooklyn, rather. And if you look for air conditioner repair in New York or New York City, that number jumps up to 210. So New York City is a more popular term. So it is theoretically possible that Google might be a little bit confused. Does a business service Brooklyn? Does it service Manhattan? The map seems to talk about Manhattan. Like where? So being as explicit, even though you would not think this would be the case, because Google is well smart, being super explicit and super consistent in the service areas that you service is really helpful. And to that, the way, and the last point I make before I'll turn it over to Crystal, is I like to think of a website, the homepage is who you are, what you do. And I think there's room for even going even deeper than the page already does. And it does. The why choose a section is very nice. But sometimes we don't think in terms of SEO content that on the homepage, and it might very well be on other pages on this website, of going into what exactly are the services, who is the audience, or who is the customer that we target. For example, long story, I used to be a CEO of a property management company in New York City. So if I was targeting, let's say, commercial real estate companies, I might want to talk about all the various city agencies that I work with and how we handle violations and codes and license and permits. If I'm targeting, let's say, residential, so I want to talk about, for example, exactly when, what services we exactly offer, where we exactly offer them. So don't be afraid on your homepage to be explicit about who you are, where you service in this particular case, what services in specific you offer and where you offer them, even though you might think, well, I already have on the other pages, Google knows, but sometimes we underestimate the absolute supremacy of the homepage, which is the most important page on the site. Okay, my spiel on the homepage is done.
No, I think just to top up on that, I think there's a couple. So two things for folks who are listening. One, we have a webinar all about homepage SEO, and you can hear Morty's wax poetical about how fantastic the homepage is. You can also hear me go into a lot of very technical details about like how you can implement some of those things on your homepage. And there's also another page about location landing pages and the different ways that you can implement locations. For your point about the Brooklyn thing and the New York thing, one thing that might be nice is having a like area served part on the homepage at the bottom that said Brooklyn, Absolutely. New York, Yonkers, New York, I don't know, the Bronx, like whatever it may be, and break them all down. My New York geography fell apart very quickly there, but you can break them down into smaller things. I think from my end, one of the things that I always get, one of the things people always ask me at SEO sessions, like, what's your biggest SEO tip? And my first biggest SEO tip, and it sounds super basic because it is super basic, and yet I see a lot of people do this in a sort of different way. So we've got, I always think about the H1 on your homepage, and the H1 on your homepage, I think, should be something that works really well. Now, if I look at this page, you'd think that's the H1 on the homepage. It's not actually the H1 on the homepage. So this is a tool that Morty's using. This is a free SEO tool called SEO Pro Extension. It's a great tool, and you can see that residential and commercial is actually an H3. And also you can, but you can see that the H1 is actually way down on the page as contact us. And then there's another one that's Desi or Air, that's contact us. Now, this is a pretty simple fix. And after the webinar, you'll receive a list of links for how you can do this. So, but essentially you want to think about the priority of the text on your website. Google has kind of Google has a tool that, so people are asking in the chat, what's it called? It's called SEO Pro Extension. I'll link that to you in the in the email as well. Yeah, what Google kind of has a TLDR approach to some of their content. So if you're to think about, somebody asked me about H1s, they're like, should you have one H1 or two H1s or three H1s? And I say, think about it like Beyonce. There's one Beyonce. There are other members of Destiny's Child, but there's only one Beyonce, right? So your H1 is the Beyonce of your page, and it should like be the center stage, and that should essentially be what the page is about. So that applies to your home page, and that applies to lots of pages as well. And it's a really good way to make sure that you've got you've got good critical information front and center when Google crawls your page. And also try to make it higher up the page. So where it says residential and commercial, that should probably be the H1, and make sure that has a key keyword for you. So for instance, if they're optimizing for HVAC, you probably want to say residential and commercial HVAC suppliers.
Yeah, you can even go like, New York City in there if you wanted to.
Yeah, that sort of thing.
That's what your service.
Yeah, that's what you want to do with your H1.
And by the way, just from a design point of view, the H1, Google doesn't care what it looks like. It could be, if you wanted to make like, this wasn't your H1 where it says, talk to an expert and the phone number, you really wanted, from a design point of view, you wanted to make that the biggest thing.
Yeah.
Google doesn't care.
But right there,
it's Google, it's all HTML code. So the H1 can be smaller than whatever else you wanted. So you can feel free to design it however you wanted it.
So that tool, that line that says New York City HVAC professionals, if you wanted to make a super quick SEO optimization, you could literally just make that the H1 and keep moving things forward.
Perfect. Turning over to Vahan.
Yeah, thank you. As already Moldy mentioned, it's a nice and professionally designed website, and the title tag targets the main keyword HVAC professionals. And they have a clear call to action on the page to capture the leads. And I have checked also, there is an organization schema markup on the page, which will help Google better understand what is about the business, where it's located, and generally including markup on the pages is a best practice I can advise always follow. But I would like to mention a couple of improvements to the homepage. And first, the title tag. Could you please mouse over the title tag? And the title tag has a company name in it, like Disraeli LLC. And the title tag is a critical component of every website on page optimization. So it helps search engines understand what is about your page and display, and it does display the title tag in the search result, right? So the current title tag, as it contains company name, it's maybe not most effective way to use limited space available for the title tag, because as you know, the Google casts the title at a certain characters limit on the search result pages, right? And I would suggest instead of having the company name, add the relevant keywords to the title tag, such as heating and cooling repair system, and it would read like HVAC professionals, heating and cooling repair service in the New York City. Thus, it will help you to target secondary and long-tail keyword related to specifically to this business type, right? Second, the pop-up. When I land on the page, I see a pop-up, and it's great design. It has a great design. What I would suggest is to test with different variations of pop-up and see how it helps you to convert more leads. Like you can change the colors, the type of pop-up, and also I would suggest to turn off pop-up and see if it does help to bring more leads, because you have the same lead capture form on the homepage as on the pop-up, and sometimes users may get frustrated when their reading experience is blocked, right? So that is something I would advise to test and turn off pop-up to see if it helps to improve conversion rates. And the third, I would highly recommend to use heat map analytics. Understanding how your visitors interact with your website is critical for identifying areas for improvements. Heatmap analytics, like Microsoft Clarity, which is a free tool, can provide valuable insights into how visitors are navigating your site, where they are clicking, and how they are engaging with your content. This information can help you identify opportunities to improve your site's usability, streamline your navigation, and optimize your call to actions. So consider implementing heatmap analytic tool, and implementation is as easy as copy pasting small JavaScript code into a CMS, which I'm sure that Wix allows you to do that.
Yep. Absolutely. I'm sorry, Crystal.
I was going to say, I think testing is really important. So with regards to the title tags, you can test your title tags if you change anything. If you want to experiment in the Wix SEO, in the Wix SEO setup checklist, we have options where you can experiment with different keywords and research different keywords when you're trying to decide what to put in your title tag. And testing CRO, or how users are clicking on your site is also really useful as well. So yeah, testing. And trying and monitoring how people are responding to different elements on your site is a great recommendation.
Yep, and you can just in case you're looking at how to do this inside of Wix, on here I pulled up a blog post on a test website that I have. You go to the SEO panel, you can change the title tag here. There's actually a SEMrush integration which should be here. You can use that as well to do some keyword research in the editor. So if you go into the page settings, you open up the SEO panel and you can change your title tag here. By the way, I just wanted, before we move on to the next page, the FAQ page, looking at the meta description that the agency wrote, it's fabulous. Adding things like family owned and operated. These are things that Google can show this in the search results. And these are things that instill confidence in the user when they're trying to make a click. And yes, maybe not an actual SEO ranking factor kind of thing, but a user seeing those kind of little tidbits of information in the meta description can really help create a click. So really job well done with the meta description. So
I agree that I think that's throughout the homepage, like the big smiling faces that, like, this is our team,
absolutely.
This is who we are, we won an award, like we're here for you, we'll help you sort out your air conditioning in the depths of New York summer. Yes, I'm here for that.
I really felt instilled with confidence looking at the page.
Yeah, it's really great.
To the FAQ page, and I love the FAQ. I love FAQs. I love this FAQ page. If you look, there's a bunch of really, really great information. What stood out to me, and this is part of the Google algorithmic equation, is that you can tell they have firsthand experience and expertise in the topic area. It really shines through. I'm not going to read through all the content now, but if you would like to, I think it's an exemplar way of writing FAQ content. You really get a very, very strong sense that they're experts, that they care, and they have firsthand experience. So job well done in the actual content itself. From an SEO point of view, just a really quick win. So frequently asked questions. If you wanted to add on the focus keyword, so frequently asked questions about HVAC, or heating and air conditioning systems. I think that would be a really quick win, or something related to that focus area. The other thing, so there's multiple.
A nice subheading as well.
Yes, and you can add, right, you can absolutely add, so you can do a heading and then a little bit of body text, like here's some questions you might be wondering about your heating and air conditioning system if you live in New York. So again, like, you're just trying to give Google a little bit more context to chew on. Again, we don't usually think this way about Google because they can make self-driving cars that can understand if a squirrel walked in front of it. But sometimes a bot is a bot, and you have to treat the bot like a bot. just one other quick point. So there's a page on design and installation, which is, again, offers absolutely amazing information. If you go through it, it's really well designed. It really shows the expertise. It really shows all about what the business does. I love the image with the plans and the diagram. One thing though is that this is image. All this is an image. And unfortunately, sometimes Google doesn't understand the content in the image itself. So one easy way is to keep the actual design, but where you talk about, who we are, all this content here, just, lay it over in a text box as opposed to having it in the image itself. It's just a quick win because this is great content that should definitely help with the ranking of the site. And on to Crystal.
Yeah, and so I think I agree that the FAQ content here is fantastic. I think it's really good. The first thing I see when I look at this is links.
Yes.
The first thing, or the lack of links. So I think that adding links to your website, and again, we have some great content on the Wix SEO Hub. We have another webinar about internal linking from Cyrus Shepard, and he talks about lots of data that they found from internal linking. But internal links, particularly line links, are a really good way to help Google crawl your site. So basically the way Google crawls your site is links first. So they bounce from one link and then they go to the site and they'll find another link, then they'll find another link, then they'll find another link. So if this page is getting a lot of traffic, which an FAQ page has a high potential to do so, then this is a great place to put keywords and put links to keywords. So for instance, if you have something like, how do I get an HVAC quote? Well, you can get a quote and then you would link to your page for getting a quote on that link, and that would add more keyword value to the page that it's going to, and it would also help users, be more helpful to users, and also helps Google crawl. We'll send more information about links, about using internal links, and about that webinar that I've mentioned there. But links here is, again, it's a really big win for both for users and for bots, and will help your more content on your page be surfaced more highly. The other thing to think about is looking at this. So this page is in terms of crawl depth, this is one stage in. So this means that when Google crawls it, they'll crawl the top page and then they'll crawl this one as a sort of next layer on your lovely content cake. And so it means that when you're adding links here, you can add links to things that are further down your sort of content hierarchy, and it will help surface those things. So internal links is a big win here. If you've got a page that doesn't have internal links, add internal links to it, especially if it's a page that's this high priority.
Low hanging fruit. And by the way, I just want to add on, you can absolutely go crazy with the FAQ here. I think there's so much content you can talk about. When do I call you if I have a problem? What kind of problems? I like to think of an FAQ. Some people don't think about it this way, as a way of really being explicit about what you do. What services what do you fix? What do you specialize in? What licenses do you have? Really building that trust. And again, being really explicit with the search engine about who you are and what you do. And FAQ is actually a great way to do that. Anyway, Vahan.
Yeah.
Dear sir, what's your take?
Thank you. I'm impressed that they have an FAQ page, and
yes,
it's really a great way to increase conversion rates on the website, because it's one thing to bring the traffic, and another thing what to do with that traffic, right? And I see again the prominent call to action at the end of the FAQ to capture the leads. Great job. And I have few recommendations which can probably help to enhance the FAQ page even more. I would recommend condensing long Q&A script with an accordion style structure, so people can click on the small plus icon and expand the answer to the question, because users usually have shorter attention spans and want to find information quickly. That format allows users to quickly skim through the questions and find the information they need without having to read through the long paragraphs of text. By using the accordion style format, you can improve the user experience and, of course, reduce the bounce rate. Consider adding FAQ schema markup to the FAQ page, and the schema schema can help make your website to be more visible to users in the search page. It may enable rich results that show questions answered directly in the search results, which will help to capture users' attention. And one way to do that is to use ChatGPT to generate the schema markup, and you can use Wix functionality to add that schema to the page, but make sure that you validate that schema markup through one of the online validators available for free. And Search Engine Journal, at Search Engine Journal, we have a great article published by Modi, how to add a schema on Wix website. That is an article I would advise you to check out. Crystal, can you open the FAQ page? And I have noticed there is also a translation available on the upper right corner, right? Can you click on the Spanish flag? So this is something I would like to recommend to not to publish like pages which are kind of under construction, because I see that when you switch to the Spanish version, the text is not translated to the Spanish, which means this page is the same as the FAQ page, which will cause duplicate content issue for the Google. And make sure like to fully translate the page and up till it isn't ready, not to publish. And the same also applies for the navigation and all other sections which are in Spanish. So it's totally okay to no index these pages, so Google doesn't index them and you can hide from the public up till they are ready.
And this is a common thing that I've seen where folks are moving through some of it, and maybe you might try to implement something and maybe you don't have time to finish or whatever. This is something that can happen. So it's important to check those pages. With regards to the translation, Wix has a great tool that allows you to translate your pages and things. But you should also make sure that if you're not ready, if you haven't translated all of them, that you go through and you can make sure you can make some visible, or you can sort of hide these from search engines, or you can block them from visibility. And that's exactly. So don't let search engines index this page. You can also take them out of the menu. So there's lots of things that you can do. We interviewed Elena Solis recently on international SEO, and one of the things that she was saying, it's a little bit of a spoiler. So sorry for, Morty, I don't know if I'm spilling the beans here.
Oh, no, spill the beans.
But one of the things she said, that if you're planning to do a local SEO or international SEO, even a one page, a high quality single page in that, like in the new language, will be of value to users. So as Vahan's saying, you want to avoid having lots of pages that might not be done. If you can manage one good page, do one good page, and then you can expand it later.
Yeah, and just really, really quick. So Vahan mentioned creating structured data markup. There's a great free tool called the Schema Markup Generator from Rank Ranger. You select the kind of markup you want to create. So here it's FAQ markup. You add your questions, the answers, you copy it, and then you go into whatever page you want in the in Wix, and you list the name of the markup, and you just paste it in, and that's it. And we'll also validate the markup for you to make sure that it's good and ready to go. So definitely. And by the way, just so you know, in many cases, Wix automatically creates markup for you. So if you look here, whoops, I'm on the wrong page. That's why. If you go to the home page.
Just a side note that schema markup itself is not a ranking factor. It's just aimed to help Google to understand your content better.
Yes. So in this particular case, we see that the local business structured data markups automatically added to the page. And that's because the team did a great job of adding the address to the bottom of the page here. And once we see that, we automatically add a local business markup to the page. Okay, on to blog. One of my favorite. So first off, I just want to kudos for having a blog.
Yes.
Absolutely kudos for having a blog. Many sites don't take advantage of it.
And we see when we look at performance of websites overall, sites with blogs tend to perform better. They just
Yeah,
do.
you're giving Google some context, some meet the shore, some semantic information. You're also giving yourself more ranking opportunities and showing off your expertise. In this case, the content very much does show off the website's expertise and the business expertise. Again, it's clearly written by somebody who has information about the topic. The topics are on target. Sometimes that's not the case with blogs. They're a little bit all over the place, but in this particular case, the content is very much on target and relevant to the audience. One real quick thing that I think you could do here again is just there's space here, or you can set up the page where you can add an H1 to the page. So, HVAC blog, again, being very, very simple about it. You can be a little bit more targeted with it. Just gives a little bit of context to Google, just having that H1 there, that this is a blog about, HVAC tips or HVAC how-tos, whatever it may be. And then, of course, underneath that H1, you can have a little bit of, body text, a couple of lines. This is a blog where you can learn all about how to maintain your HVAC system. I'm making that up, whatever it may be. So just really, feel comfortable if you have a blog. Yes, it might not, look that you want to have the post right there and the information right there. I totally understand that. But having just 1 or 2 lines of content can really help Google and make all of the difference.
Yeah, a huge, and you can also, again, add those internal links into some of, because blogs tend to be more of a sort of informational pages. You can add a sort of link to more of transactional pages as well. Sort of like, this is a blog about how you can, how you can get HVAC services, and then you can link to your HVAC services, for instance, and move things forward.
Really interesting point, and I don't know the answer. In this case, it might be absolutely the correct thing to do. So HVAC is if you're not from, I don't know, the property management industry, it might be a term that the average person may or may not know. I do not know. I have no idea if your target audience is, let's say, your average homeowner, then maybe breaking down the terms be HVAC, or rather than HVAC, air conditioning and heating system. I don't know if that's exactly accurate, because I know there's also venting involved with the HVAC. So I don't know if that's accurate or not. But again, if it's a term that may or may not be readily understood by the audience, if this was a professional property management company, that's your target audience, and HVAC is definitely fine. And again, it might be the absolute case in this particular case that HVAC is fine. I'm making nothing to do with this particular website, but something for any website to think about, that you are in your industry, you are the expert. You may be using terms that the average person may or may not know about. We see this all the time in SEO. I can throw a bunch of SEO terms and whatever. And to me, it's like, yeah, absolutely, normal jargon. But for most people, when I talk to my wife about it, it sounds like I'm from outer space.
My husband goes, internet good? And I go, yes, internet good.
Yes. My father's like, you do your computer thing, right? So it's one thing to consider, just to sort of, pause, check yourself. Is that the right terminology? Is it too much jargon for the average user or the average person who we're targeting with our content? In this case, again, I do not know, but it's a general point that I wanted to bring up.
Yeah, that's a good general point. I think one of the things I like about their blogs is, like, I get, like you were saying about how they're sharing genuine expertise. So I think in that ultimate guide, the first thing they did was say what an HVAC is, which is useful, because honestly, I did not know before I found out about this website. But one of the other things that I think is great is I had a look on their website, and again, they're really good with their transparency. They're like, this is our address, this is where we work, this is what we look like, this is what we do, like, we're all right, that sort of thing. On their Instagram, they've got some great photos of some of their installations. Morty, if you scroll all the way down, I think you can get to their Instagram. Yeah, if you click on that one for me. They've got some great photos of, like, check out this HVAC unit we just put in, like, look at this apartment block, like, see, like, and I think that stuff's really useful. Those are the pictures that I want to see if I want to see if this is a thing for me. I also love those trainers, those sneakers, like, I love that. But I think that there's an opportunity to include some of that stuff in the blog. So I think including some of these real life pictures, I think, would be really good. And you can literally just take them off of Instagram and pop them onto onto the blog. But I think also, and that helps Google to understand that you have an experience, and those pictures will be unique to you because you're the only person who installed an HVAC unit on that particular building. So that's useful. You can also add in information about like tags and captions that say, HVAC unit that we installed, in the Bronx, like at a duplex, like, and that's really great. Additionally, there's an opportunity to add in some quotes. So when you go onto the homepage, you've got, big smiling faces of their team who are really enthusiastic about what they do. They've got the shoes to prove it. And and so it'd be great to have some quotes from them that's like, and even from some of their customers. So, so let's say they've got one that's like, how long should an HVAC system last? Right. So they have one that says about them. And then they can have another quote that says, yeah, I installed a unit and it lasted this long and it was really great. Like that, or we generally see that units can last this long or that long or that long. And it's really good for adding in the experience. So Google has experience, expertise, authority, and trust. And that experience point is something that will be absolutely unique to your team. And it's an easy and really good way to add unique content to your blogs.
Yeah, and by the way, to your point about the images, if you include the images in the post, you can actually rank in image search. So just another ranking opportunity. Right.
And Wix has a tool where when you add an image to your website, it will automatically generate some tags via Vision AI, which is Google's image recognition software. So it will add information for you as well. So it's something that's really useful, and especially if they already have so many great images on their Instagram.
Amazing. Vahan, what say you?
Yeah, so many great points you brought up, and of course, I want to mention that having blog is a critical component in an SEO, and if you are serious about your business, you should fully explore how you can optimize your website for different type of keywords and increase your search visibility. And to the point, adding images, I would advise on top of that also record the videos of their repairing and embedding on the page, and using video object schema again. And the more unique content you have, which belongs only to you and is not found elsewhere, the higher your content will be valued by the Google. And I have a couple of recommendations I would like to make regarding the blog article pages. Crystal, can you please open a blog post? Yeah. And as you may know, Google recently has introduced double E update to their searcher rater guidelines. And it means they also take into account expertise by authors. And could you please open an author page if possible? Regarding EAT and now double EAT, I would highly recommend to complete the author pages by adding social profile links to the author page, to the author's LinkedIn, Twitter, social pages, as well as adding short biography of the author to send the Google signals about expertise and experience in the field of the topic of the blog article. This will help Google better understand that the author behind the article is really experienced person and it's a highly valuable content. Second, I would advise to shorten titles, SEO titles, as well as URLs. And long titles can be often cut off in the search result, as you know, which means users who search and see your blog post may not be able to see the full title and not fully understand what is about the article. So I would advise to shorten it and keep for users easier to understand. And third, I would recommend to add breadcrumbs to blog posts. And breadcrumbs can be an excellent way to help users navigate through your site and find related content. They also provide a clear hierarchy for search engines, making it easier for them to understand the structure of your content. Adding breadcrumbs to blog posts that fall under the main category can help users navigate back to the main category page, as well as provide context for the content they are currently viewing. This can improve overall the user experience and help keep users engaged. And I'm sure Wix has a functionality for adding the breadcrumbs.
Yes, I actually had them on my blog.
Yeah, so there's a couple of ways that you can do that. Breadcrumbs are great for allowing you to add in breadcrumb schema as well, and also to add in again more internal links. So someone's asking, we're about to get to the chats, but someone's asking breadcrumbs. I've got a few people asking that. It is not from Hansel and Gretel, which didn't work out well for them. A breadcrumb is actually, it's sort of but it is a sort of trail. So for instance, if you're on a blog, or if you are on a or
designers, avert your eyes.
Or if you are in something that is like a product thing, it might be that you have something that goes from product page, from the home page to the product category to the product name, and that's a breadcrumb. So there you've got that from there to there.
No real functionality for me. I was just playing around to see how to do it and how to mess around with it on the platform. But
precisely,
let's just go back to my homepage. Please avert your eyes. I apologize. I'm so embarrassed.
So there's a few different ways that you can do that. We will link you to the knowledge base article that will show you how to create a breadcrumb in the email chat. And I think we've got a lot of questions. We've had a lot of people very interested. So I think we will be moving on to the Q&A portion of the session. So yes, thank you to everyone for joining us and for having lots of questions and being very active today. And thank you, Vahan, for your great insights. And for talking lots about the someone said double, so you're pronouncing it double EAT. Good.
Call it yee.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, and I think Sean Price is also wondering what was the heat map tool that you mentioned? That was Microsoft
Clarity.
Microsoft Clarity. And then also I think other ones that people have used historically are Hotjar and other things like that, but I'm not sure I'm not sure. Morty, have you got the document with the question?
I do. Okay. So someone asked, and it's a great question, about the tools. What are the tools we use to analyze the headers on the page, the tools we use to analyze the title tags. By the way, in Chrome, it wasn't working for me for some reason. I think it's because of the way my computer was set up. If you hover over a tab in Chrome, a little pop-up will show up, and that's the title tag. That's the title that Google's looking at. So the tools, really quickly, there is and we'll send this out, I think, in the email, but there was the Chrome extension from Marketing Syrup called SEO Pro extension. And that's where we looked at the title tag and the headers and the status of the structured data markup. There was also SEMrush, is what I used for the keyword research, where there's actually an integration in Wix in the blog panel, SEO panel, and in the main SEO setup checklist, where you can access SEMrush keyword research. It'll tell you data around how often people are searching for a given term. And that's where we saw, hey, people are looking for New York City HVAC or heating and air conditioning repair more often than Brooklyn, which I take personally because I was born in Brooklyn. The other tool that I showed you was from Rank Ranger. It was their free schema markup generator, where they walk you through creating the codes. You don't have to know how to write code, and you just click copy and paste it into Wix. So that was the third tool that we used. And I will try to send out the links for all of them, so you have them.
Thank you.
Okay. So one question was about using the same city throughout the homepage. If I service, let's say I service Brooklyn, I service Queens, I service Manhattan. How do I go about being consistent about telling Google where I service? I'm assuming outside of the service area you're listing in Google Business Profile, but just with the copy on the page. How do I show consistency?
So I think that in my experience of working on this, it's important to understand the kinds of keywords that people are using to find you. So in a place like Brooklyn or Queens or Staten Island or something like in a big city like New York, where it takes a very long time to move 5 miles, being neighborhood specific is really important. In a place that's a bigger spread, then you might not need to be so neighborhood specific. Like in a smaller town, you can probably be like I don't know, Buffalo, New York. We serve Buffalo, New York, right? There's like which is a smaller town. It's probably not so important to be like that specific neighborhood in Buffalo, New York, unless it's a walking distance service. But for instance, I've done a lot of work in the West Country of England, which is also called Devonshire, which is also called the southwest of England, which is also called the west of England. And there's lots of different ways that people talk about that space. So you need to think about, if you're in Holland, there's the Netherlands, that sort of thing. So be aware of the words that people are using and try to optimize for them. So think about where most of your customers go, where most of your customers come from. And that should be like your big headline. And then maybe in the paragraph about it, like let's say you're doing HVAC for the Bronx, right? You say HVAC suppliers in the Bronx, because most of your customers come from the Bronx, right? We are the best HVAC suppliers in the Bronx. And we serve lots of people from around New York as well, in these places, and these places, or something like in the paragraph. But your priority thing should be your main customer base. And in Wix, you can actually see where a lot of your traffic is coming from geographically as well in your Wix analytics. And that's definitely worth thinking about when you're looking at your location optimizations.
Yeah, just really being consistent, not saying in one place we service here, then another place there. I think that's what confuses the search engines primarily. And of course, you can have multiple. If you service, I service Queens and Brooklyn. Queens and Brooklyn are vastly different. You can even have different pages addressing the unique needs of HVAC in Queens versus Brooklyn, which is probably not the case. Probably more if you're maybe there are different regulations in New Jersey versus New York. That might be a good way to differentiate the content.
But the searchers are probably, the people searching in New Jersey are probably likely to get New York information. So yeah, you like into the New York search results. So that's something to think about.
Someone asked about addressing alt text. Vam, maybe you could address this. So first off, maybe let's explain what alt text is and what you do, why it's important, and why it matters.
The alt text?
Yes.
Yeah, so it's first of all helpful for users with disabilities. Alt text helps text readers read the web page and understand images, as well as it helps Google also understand what is on the image. So it's important for sending Google signal what about the image, also helping for users with accessibility issues to read the content. If you don't want certain images to be read by so-called screen readers, you can just have alt text empathy, and they will just ignore that as a part of the web page. Those are applied maybe for some kind of icons which are not relevant to the content.
Yeah, so it's a great way if you ever take a piece of content, copy and paste it, and throw into a TTS reader, you'll see that if there's alt text there, it won't show the image. Obviously, it'll just show what's described in the image, and it's a great way of helping people with impairments. And it does help. It's not why you should have it there, but it does help from an SEO point of view. It helps Google understand what that image might be about. Because again, Google can't really, well, it can't. Well, I don't want to get into the specifics. It doesn't look at what exactly is in your image. It doesn't fully understand what's in the
same
image.
way as text.
Yeah, you need to tell it what's in the image, and alt text is one way.
Yeah, so Google reads images in a different way from the way that it reads text. So you need to think about how you prioritize that.
Let's talk about light boxes. It's a complicated question about, do we use light boxes? Can Google understand the text in the lightbox, and so forth. So first, just I want to mention there's something called, whoa, I'm trying to remember, I'm dating myself, 2016 or 2017, Google introduced something called the intrusive interstitial update, interstitial being fancy word for pop-up. And there was supposed to be intrusive interstitial Armageddon, where Google was going to penalize all of the websites with intrusive pop-ups, which never really happened. However, it is officially a ranking signal that if the interstitial or the pop-up is intrusive, meaning, you know, those ones where you can't really find the X, not in this case. This one was not intrusive. I was clearly able to click out of it. I was clearly able to find the X, but it's something to be careful about if you're trying to, I guess, for lack of a better way of explaining it, trick people into using the form because they can't get out unless they use the form. Google could theoretically demote the rankings of the web page and the website. So be careful with interstitials and pop-ups. In terms of the content, Crystal, can Google pick up the content inside of a lightbox?
It'll depend on how it's implemented. So I think it's worth thinking about. I think with always with pop-ups, I think it's worth thinking about where the value is for the user, where the value is for the business, and there, anytime you add something to your website, you know, you have to there's a bit of a give and take with what you're doing, particularly if it's a visual element. So I think you should make sure that you think about what works best for you, and just test it and make sure that it's all set up properly.
Yeah, and Vahana, you were talking about conversions and the lightbox. That might be counterintuitive, and it's worth experimenting to see what actually works or doesn't work. I was wondering if you could maybe elaborate a little bit about that, because it is a great topic.
Yeah, sure, and that is where heat map can help you. If you implement the heat map, you will see how basically users interact with the pop-up. They just instantly click, just hit the back button in the browser and go back to the search results and analyze if it really does help or negatively affects your visitors' user experience, does also reduce the conversion rate, right? So if you want a pop-up which doesn't that much of intrusive, you may consider pop-up which is not fully blocking your screen. Yeah.
So
by the way, I would like to mention that cookie consent pop-ups never gonna hurt your rankings, because Google is pretty smart to figure out that it's a cookie consent pop-up and never penalizes for that.
Yes, which is so funny because we mentioned before, sometimes Google is incredibly smart, and that's one of those areas where Google is incredibly smart.
Can I just jump in with it because there's a lot of people asking questions in the chat. We have the Q&A as well. But on the chat, lots of people are asking about what is a heat map? What is a heat map? What's a heat map? How do you map the heat? What is a heat map? I thought we were talking about air conditioners. What is a heat map? Now, Vahan, you talked a bit about heat maps. Do you want to give us a quick summary of what a heat map is and why they're useful for SEO?
Sure, of course. Heat map is visualizing how users interact with your website. There's basically color-based information on the web pages they visit, and the parts they click most, it's highlighted in red, and you actually see that when people browsing the website, they click on certain place. If you see a certain part of your web page has a high activity, kind of users click, interact, consider putting your call to actions there. That may help drive more leads, because it's basically the most the part of the page which attracts users most, right? Yeah, I think there are a lot of information available on the web on heat maps, and I highly recommend to check it out.
Yeah, they're useful, a useful bit of kit, and you can put something. No, you don't download the heat map. You would add a little bit of script into your Wix website. If you go to developer tools or the script area, there's an area where you can manage your scripts, and you would add that onto your site, and then you go to the actual tool that you've used, and they'll save all the data and give you lots of information and give you screenshots of little sort of blobs of where everybody's clicking and where everybody's looking, and that sort of thing.
So people have been asking about using what tools do I use? How do I know whether or not a page is performing well, if I need to do optimization or and so forth. And I'm going to show you something inside of Wix using my own websites, my own data. I'm embarrassing myself. And I'll show you. So if you connect to Search Console, Google Search Console via Wix, you can do that with your SEO setup checklist in one click. In the SEO home inside of your dashboard, you will have automatic Google Search Console insights. Now, Google Search Console is a tool that does many things, and we have a webinar about this next month with Google about this, so we'll get more information from them directly, so to make sure that you come back for that webinar. But just a really quick overview. Search Console, one of the things that it does is isolate your performance, help you understand your performance on Google in terms of impressions, which is how often your URL have appeared on the Google results. So somebody searches, your URL shows up, they scroll down, brings up more URLs, your URL shows up, that's an impression, and actual clicks. And you can actually see here, like this page that I did a podcast episode about doing SEO in China, which is actually a topic, believe it or not, saw an increase of 64 impressions. So great. I go to look at clicks. All right, this post and that page saw an increase in clicks, and this saw a decrease in clicks. I can also look at actual queries. I saw an increase in impressions for the term SEO Baidu. I saw an increase of clicks. I didn't see any increase in clicks. I haven't posted anything in a while. So you'll be able to see an increase or decrease. And there's also fuller set of analytics, Google Search Console analytics inside of the reports, inside of your Wix analytics. So check that out. You can get all sorts of information all about how your website is performing. Now that I've done embarrassing myself with my data, I do think it's time for us to say goodbye.
Thank you all so much for joining us and for being SEO enthusiasts. It has been fantastic. I would like to tell Simon Cox that yes, I have seen what you have posted, and thank you very much for keeping us amused. So yeah, great. Thank you. Thank you so much to Vahan for joining us from SEJ. It's been an absolute pleasure. Go check out SEJ, searchenginejournal.com. They're fantastic.
Yes, and don't forget to join us for next month for our webinar around Google Search Console performance reports with Daniel Weisberg over at Google Search Console.
Thank you so much, Vahan.
Thank you, Vahan. Thank you, SEJ. Bye, everybody.